This video is going to be exposing esoteric techniques for verse interpretation. Esoteric, secret, not known. If we read Lao Tzu, the Buddha, and Jesus, the Dhammapada, the Tao Te Ching, and the Sermon on the Mount, when we get done interpreting, we should have the same teaching from all three of those teachers. If we're not there, we haven't got it interpreted. So that's what we're looking for. My name is Dan Paulson. Welcome to the video. A friend of mine requested that I just go through some small verses and talk through the mental processes that I go through. There's some things that I learned over time that would have, I wish I'd known them early on. I really battled with these verses a long time, and I finally learned some things about them that make it so much easier to learn what to do. So I'm going to pass that along in this video. All right, Stefan, here's what's going on. I'm going to use those three teachers right there in those three sources. Okay, treat this like a guru, like you went up and you just asked the master a question, and he's giving you cryptic messages. So when you listen to people who got these cryptic messages, who say the Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao, they'll say things like, oh, it's nebulous, it's mysterious, you continually seek this throughout life, that it's just something that is, you really can't talk about it. It's an experiential sort of a thing. And I'm going to tell you right now, they don't have it interpreted. That is not a mental step at all. They're not getting to the bottom of what this means right here. Okay, first of all, what we do is we see that there is a Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao is the first verse. What is the Tao? We've got told and we've got eternal are things that we need to understand in here. The Tao is what this teaching is. It's the way we flow in life, the way life works. All of them are going to be that way, the way your life experience is. And how that happens, the understanding of this material right here is something that's very personal. You have to make it a personal trip. This is not a preacher trip. That's the blind leading the blind. The person telling you that this cannot be understood is the blind leading the blind in their realm. You have to think about this and go, did somebody write something that you can't understand because you're not smart enough, or is nonsensical and is just meant for you to puzzle over? I think there's something more to it than that. So we go at it a different way. This whole flow that we want, this understanding that we want that can be told is not the eternal Tao. We want the eternal Tao. So obviously, what we want to do is manipulate the told. The Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao. Then what is the eternal Tao? It can't be told. I'm telling it now. It's not eternal, is it? What this means is that you have to make it your own. What I'm doing with the verse right here doesn't even matter. You can sit and listen to me do this, and you can get academic knowledge of it, but you have to sit down and go through this over and over. And what happens is your brain's wires to do this. It wires to be able to read them this way. So the Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao, to me, means this is a mental trip. It's a personal inward trip. The Tao that is taken, the Tao that is experienced personally, is the eternal Tao. Here, the Tao is the way, the pathway that you must take, the pathway that you must take for yourself. Each of us take that path. So, you can talk about it all day long, but if you don't take the path, you're just talking about it. It remains academic until it's experiential. And when it becomes experiential, then it's true, then it's real. I also know that in many teachings right up front, they're going to tell us it's mental, that it is a mental process. In a parallel teaching, let's go look at the Buddha. First thing he says in the Dhammapada. Okay, I've got this one is in pretty plain language. This is Buddha's core teaching, the Dhammapada. This is the very first two verses right in there. So it's taking in the same place as what we just read from Lao Tzu, right the very first in the beginning. So this is how it's starting. All that we are is the result of what we have thought. It is founded on our thoughts. It is made up of our thoughts. I'll stop right there and let's just talk about that for a second. So basically then, what he's saying is that we become a product of our bundle of memories. And that when we look at that, we're going to understand that this is a mental process. That, like what we just learned from Lao Tzu, it's a mental process. It's got a little bit different information, but right up front, it's telling us that this is It's going to be a mental trip that we're taking here. If we went to Jesus, what are we going to see? All right, verse 1 of the Sermon on the Mount. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. So now we've got blessed. I think we can figure that's okay. That's a good thing. Poor in spirit. We need to figure out what that is. Kingdom of heaven. All right, let's identify the kingdom of heaven as a place that is here now. The kingdom of heaven within. The kingdom of heaven is like Buddha's nirvana. It's peaceful. It's blissful. It is living without a conflict, mental conflict. Spirit is what we're living through in the background. How can you be poor in spirit? What is a spirit? Even if you had a spirit that was like when you die, you become disembodied and float around, what do you do to make that poor? How do you get poor in spirit? We have to be devoid of something, poor in something. What is spirit? We need to identify spirit. Spirit is what we're living through in the background. When you're not consciously paying attention, how are you functioning? You know, when you learn to drive a car, you have to pay attention, make mistakes, focus. You have to look at all the switches and everything before you flip anything. Later on, after you get good at it, you can drive cross country, talking to your buddies, never even paying attention while you're obeying all the laws, setting on cruise control, making all the exits without even paying attention anymore. That's your spirit right there. We're working through our bundle of memories. That's what the spirit is, the bundle of memories. That's how we function. Blessed are the poor in spirit. Blessed are those who are devoid of a bundle of memories, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. So you have to work the verses that way. You have to understand that they're all going to be mental. Poor in spirit is a mental place to be. That means that I don't have all of my judgments in place. And as a result, live free of that. You live without the mental turmoil. You live in a place of mental peace. Yeah. We're looking for inner sanctity. Okay, so what's weird is that within the Bible are all the clues. When you interpret it, you find out the Bible is telling us what to do itself. I am that, I am. What is God? God is, if you saw the Moses Code, the idea is that you are whatever you say you are. Whatever your life is a product of all of the judgments you've made, the experiences that you've had, and the judgments that you've made towards those and how you hold them. When it comes to verse interpretation, though, there's another layer to that. I am that. I am the verse. What I want to suggest is that we're going to start small. We have to kind of get into it at a small level, but at some point in time when we're reading stories like Ezekiel and things like that, that is also playing out like these verses in our mind, but they're huge and complex. Where you do the same thing with them, except that look how big they are and how old they are. So I only get into them at a. I'm sure it's not the level that they got to. Okay, so when we go through and interpret these verses, always remember that we're doing that we're making sure that these verses are going to be somehow a product of our mental construct and how we come about in life. Right up front, it's telling us that. We're a product of those thoughts, the memories, all of that. We haven't got there yet with Lao Tzu, but Lao Tzu is telling us this is an inward path. It's a mental path. So all three across the board, I'm look at those and go, when I get done interpreting, they're all telling me it's an inner path. One of them is telling me it's good to make sure it's empty. But they're all telling me that it's an inner path. The others are going to tell me that very quickly, that it's good to be empty. Let's go back and look at them. All right, I'm going to go back to the Buddhas here and talk about something else. This is where we put ourselves into the verse. All that we are is the result of what we have thought. It is founded on our thoughts. It's made up of our thoughts. So that's telling us that we are a product of our life experiences and the way we've judged them. If a man speaks or acts with an evil thought, pain follows him like the wheel follows the foot of the ox that draws the carriage. Now, when they start using an element like this, it's like I'm the ship or I'm the dog. Now I am what? I am the ox that draws the carriage. The wheel following, pain follows like a wheel. Wheel is cyclical, going around and around. Pain, we got cyclical pain following us through life as a result of an evil thought. An evil thought, we have to identify that. That's an analogous term. It doesn't mean, ooh, I want to do this to you, that innocent person or something like that. What it means is that I have something inside of me that is a memory that is not okay. I might have been a victim. I might have been molested or something like that in it. And I'm so hateful over it that it continues to act out throughout life. That's the pain following me through life. So we'll get down to the second one, the same thing. You treat the verse exactly the same way. All that we are is a result of what we have thought. It's founded on our thoughts. It's made up of our thoughts. All right, we got that. So far, so good. If a man speaks or acts with pure thought, happiness follows him, like a shadow that never leaves. So pure thought, what? We've emptied out the evil thought. We've purified things. So we have happiness that follows him, like a shadow that never leaves. That is the same thing as poor in spirit. Pure thought, poor in spirit. Happiness follows him like a shadow that never leaves. Theirs is the kingdom of heaven, that mental space. You see how they become the same thing when you treat everything like an analogous term. It's their version of, I'm writing about a ship, I'm writing about a dog, I'm writing about a tetherball. Oh, I'm going to do something different. They're doing different versions of verbiage that are nevertheless carrying the same conceptual mental teaching. Let's go to Lao Tzu and see what he's done. The name that can be named is not the eternal name. So we know right now that the Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao. That's our mental trip. The name that can be named is not the eternal name. So that means, we'll get ahead and that's going to become clear. The unnameable is the eternally real. That matches this right here. The name that can be named is not the eternal name. So when something isn't named, it's eternally real. We got to work on what these naming is. Right here is where it's going to come online. Naming is the origin of all particular things. It's a mental process. Naming, that's me having a life experience, a judgment. I now remember this. That's a memory and an emotion right there. Naming is just that. So we are not pure in spirit. We are picking on an evil thought, perhaps, or a good thought of all particular things. Everything that we judge and have in life as experiences, that's the origin of it for us. I want to talk about, if you're using the Tao Te Ching, I would recommend different translations side by side. Here, Gia Fu Feng has this, the named is the mother of 10,000 things, which sounds different than naming is the origin of all particular things. That lets you know it's a big thing. There's a lot. Think back on your life. How many things can you remember that you've judged? That's it. Free from desire, you realize the mystery. Now, desire here, what we want to understand is that it's a mental process again. We're working, all of these are going to be together. Free from desire, it doesn't mean my physical desire. I mean, you might be hungry. You're going to desire food. There's nothing wrong with desiring food. Caught in desire, you see only the manifestation. So you're hungry, you desire food, and it's going to show up. No, it doesn't work like that. You have to think it through and go, what the hell are they doing? So caught in whatever you're hanging on to, your desire is like the evil thought. You're not poor in spirit. You see only the manifestations. You see the repeat of something occurring because of something you're hanging on to. That one lines up with Buddha's there. Pain follows, like the wheel follows the ox. In fact, treat desire like something that was named. I named that, so I desire that. You don't really desire it. You might say, I hate that. I don't like it. I don't want to deal with it. I don't want to talk about it. That's called desiring it. It's not really desire. It is hanging on to something that you're not letting go of. And it is something that you have named, which is that's what it is. It's just hanging on to an experience, unresolved. We know it's cyclical because we imply it. Caught in desire, you see only the manifestations. Of what? Of everything. These are the cyclical pain or the things that continue to trigger out in life. And it could be good or bad. I mean, if you're getting triggered over the smell of grandma's apple pie and that's a good, happy thing, that's fine. It's the negative and the derogatory stuff we're looking for here. In fact, from a conceptual standpoint, this comment right here, the caught in desire, you see only the manifestations, directly aligns with what Buddha said when he said, if a man that has had an evil thought, pain follows, like the wheel that follows the foot of the ox that draws the carriage. This is conceptually the same thing. Whatever I'm hanging on to, I see it repeating through life. So anyway, then if we were to realize that, then we go back up and say the unnameable is the eternally real. That's kind of like poor in spirit. You want to be poor in spirit. For yours is the kingdom of God, or the kingdom of heaven. The kingdom of heaven. The unnameable is the eternally real. Kingdom of God, kingdom of heaven, same thing. And Buddha's, again, much more plain language, actually, in Buddha material. Happiness, like a shadow that never leaves. Yeah, that mental space right there. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, that's really kind of a demonstration across the board of how they're all the same. What I'm going to do is just kind of focus in one area. I think what I'm going to do, actually I should do two. I'm going to do some from the Tao Te Ching here, because they're that fun cryptic little verses. Buddhas have a different kind of a flavor to them that takes a little bit different kind of a thinking. However, I can align Lao Tzu with Jesus verses very easily. So why don't I just stick with those two for now? And let's get right back into then the Tao Te Ching. And what I'll do is I'll just go through the verses and talk them through in my head, how I'm balancing them out. You look through the stuff and you read it and go, wow, that's a weird thing. Like that caught in desire, you see only the manifestations. So the hungry mom has food pop up or something. You look at it and go, that doesn't work. But that's interpreting it in the physical world. You have to make it mental, and you have to shift the verbiage and understand that it means something different. If it's good for me to strip off a garment and become naked, that is spiritual, not physical. It means I take off the burdensome things and I become free of them, and now I am not covered by them. So we have to make sure when we're using the terms, we understand what they mean. Fasting, that one doesn't shift. You fast in the physical world means don't eat. But fasting in the spiritual world, and when I use spiritual, I mean mental. Fasting there means to stop consuming, stop judging, stop looking at life and judging life that you see out there. That's not how to live life. That's how we start living life, but that's how we don't want to continue to live that way. Drinking wine is a different way of feeling. So we have to understand that every word has to be looked at. Every one of them. They're all puzzles that were created by people who had their entire lives to just make these up, by the thousands of people. There's a lot here. We're one little brain trying to pick through it. It's big and it can be daunting. Okay, I want to back up a little bit and reemphasize something here. Every one of these is your guru. You become whoever is the seeker that is looking for the guru on the mountaintop. This is the guru on the mountaintop, and you're the seeker that went up and said, my life sucks. Master, please tell me, what is life all about? What is life about? But the master's not going to give it to you in plain language because it's just too simple. That's academic. You need to figure it out. You need to puzzle through it, and in doing so, you will learn it experientially. So it's going to be coming to you in a cryptic manner. Also, it'll travel around this way. An anchored ship cannot sail, will travel anywhere in public. You must turn in and forgive who hurt you, will not travel very far at all. You encode it. So the Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao. The name that can be named is not the eternal name. The unnameable is the eternally real. Naming is the origin of all particular things. So what he just told me there, as I process through it, is that it's a mental path. It's good to leave everything as a void as you are in the beginning, like Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. The unnameable is the eternally real. You don't want to fill your brain up with judgments. We will. The healing path is going to be how to resolve what we gathered. Free from desire, you realize the mystery. Caught in desire, you see only the manifestations. Desire, mystery. Caught, desire, manifestations. But Master, I don't desire anything. The Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao. Oh, that's right, this is mental. Not physical, not about desiring. Free from desire, free from hanging on to your past judgments. You realize the mystery. You will flow through life, the mystery of life. It'll be good. Caught in desire, caught in the things that you hang on to, you see only the manifestations. That's Buddha. The evil thought in the wheel follows. This is me. You see only the manifestations. There's the repeating cycles of what you're hanging on to. An anchored ship cannot sail. Caught in desire, you see only the manifestations. Mental, caught in hanging on to something. You only see it repeating, its cycle, its cause and effect. Based in energy, the energy state of the memory, the emotional state, and the strength of it. Yet mystery and manifestation come from the same source. This source is called darkness. Okay, we emerge from the cosmic background. And when we live life, good things happen and bad things happen. Where does the energy for that come from? And by that, I mean not just life itself, but let's say something happened one time, but at some point you can step outside of it and go, you know what, something keeps cycling because of that. That event happened long ago, yet because of that long ago event, something is still continuing to emerge over and over again. Where does the energy for that come from? The energy is there. It's going to experience, good or bad, based on the way we hold that judgment, that memory, the whatever it is, when we're not poor in spirit. I know I keep blending those terms. Basically, it's this. We live life, and we're in motion in life, and the energy for us to live life is continually flowing, and it emerges. However, the energy comes to us. It's like blank. It's plain. It doesn't have a flavor to it. It is our thoughts that give it its flavor. It is the things that we hold in our eye, or in our perceptions, in our memories is what it is, that as we live life, it continues to, that's why things continue to unfold in the way they do. So when it says things like, good and bad come from the same place, what's really happening is that place is right up here. The energy that's coming is just, you look at people, and some people have bad things happen and some people have good things happen, which means everybody has energy. Why is it good or why is it bad? It's not because of the source. It's because of what's up here. And what's crucial to understand, it's a secret place. It's not in your consciousness. It's in your memories. It's in the stored things that you don't like to address. It's at a deeper layer than what's conscious. You have to go to the deepest level of where you can go in your memory, but you don't want other people to go, and you keep it secret to yourself. That's where the issue is. In fact, if you're familiar with more modern terminology, it's the shadow. They were doing shadow work. The healing path is shadow work. Mystery and manifestations, what are those? It's the things that are the flow of life, the good flow of life, or the things that repeat constantly bad, all come from the same place. In Abrahamic material, this is going to be, I will bless those who bless you and curse those who curse you. Yet the good and the bad both come from the same source. This source is called darkness. Darkness within darkness, the gateway to all understanding. Gateway. Darkness. We need to understand what is in the dark. We need to turn inward. We need to understand that what we judge in life is going to continue to happen, and that it's going to there's going to be, whatever that source is, the Tao. Life unfolds. We consume energy, and we live through energy. And things continue to repeat because we're hanging on to things. All right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to skip over some things that are going to be a little bit more complicated. I'm just going to stick with one style of verse that is going to be using component parts that are always us. I'll jump from between Lao Tzu and Jesus and show that style of verse. So you will find this style all over the place, and I've been using it already. I'm going to move to I guess it's verse number 11. I don't think they're really called verses, but page number 11 right here. And this is how it works. We join spokes together in a wheel, but it's the center hole that makes the wagon move. Okay, in the same way that an anchored ship cannot sail, I am the ship, and what I'm hanging on to I can't move from. The dog tied in the yard, I become the dog tied up. We're going to do the exact same thing with these kinds of verses. We join spokes together in a wheel, but it's the center hole that makes the wagon move. We are the wheel. We join spokes together in a wheel means that as we're living through life, we are creating the wheel that is going to be the cycles. But it's the center hole that makes the wagon move. It is what is inside of the hub of that wheel that we're creating that dictates how that wagon flows through life. We shape clay into a pot, but it's the emptiness inside that holds whatever we want. We are now the pot. We shape clay into a pot. In the same way we join spokes together in a wheel We're creating our life through our experiences. We shape clay into a pot. We're creating our life experiences. We're creating ourselves from the clay of our life experiences. Analogous terms. They're not that flowery when you get down to it. It's a mental thing. But it's the emptiness inside that holds whatever we want. It is up here that holds how life works. In the same way the center hole dictated. So these are going to be identical verses. We hammer wood for a house, but it's the inner space that makes it livable. Got it now, right? I'm the house. You're the house. We live life. We're building our house through our life experiences. Metaphorically, the inner space is what makes it livable or not. Close your eyes, sit quietly someplace. Does it stay quiet, or does your mind make it hard to live up there? Then it says we work with being, but non-being is what we use. So we're no longer those, but the lesson down here is that we live life judging life, but then we live through those judgments. So, fun stuff. This is wonderful to use. Now, Jesus stuff, I've got that on the computer here, so let me pull up some of his examples. All right, I'm going to talk through a fun one here. This is back in Matthew. This is chapter 9 and verse 14 is where this picks up. And I'm going to cover Jesus' verses down here. We've got a bride chamber, we've got a garment, we've got wine bottles, wine, and we need to resolve all of that. Okay, so the disciples of John came to Jesus and asked him, how come us and the Pharisees, all of us fast often, but your disciples don't fast at all? And Jesus said to them, can the children of the bride chamber mourn as long as the bridegroom is with them? But the days will come when the bridegroom shall be taken from them, and then they shall fast. No man put a piece of new cloth on an old garment, for that which is put to fill it up takes from the garment, and the rent is made worse. So what he's saying, don't put a patch on an old coat, or it makes it worse. Neither do men put new wine into old bottles, else the bottles break, and the wine runs out, and the bottles perish, but they put new wine into new bottles, and both are preserved. So one thing that should be clear there as you read through that is that it should sound like it's like, that's a weird thing. It's such a strange flow. And it's supposed to be that way. It's supposed to get your attention. It's teaching something. They're asking about the physical world. They're also asking about the past. John represents the past. John represents the literal understanding of the religion. He's teaching Christianity or the religion as if it is out there. He's got the old understanding. He has not entered the narrow gate. He baptizes Jesus, actually. That's the crossing of the threshold. And then Jesus spends 40 days in the wilderness. We're going to see, what do we see in Exodus? Moses crosses the Red Sea, crossing the threshold, and spends 40 days in the desert, or 40 years in the desert. So we got our 40 components after crossing the threshold. Again, we're looking for concepts here in the background. And actually, to describe that a little bit better, I know that the baptismal is the crossing of a threshold, and then he goes right into the wilderness for 40 days, which is the same thing as like where the Israelites went across the Red Sea and then spent 40 years in the desert. Those places align up as where you've turned inward to a point of healing. So if Jesus is being baptized, he's crossing that threshold. Right there is where the inward turn is, and then into the healing. So John represents the old understanding, not the new understanding. He's the old way, and he's going to get killed off, actually. We're going to move on from the old understanding. We're going to drop it completely. So more clearly, John represents the idea that at one point in time, we did not understand the material at this layer. Once we've entered the narrow gate and interpret and get to a deeper layer, we're now leaving John behind. And that represents our literal understanding. There's something deeper in here that we're going after. And so that transition is happening right there. That's a representation of the past. But then Jesus steps right into bride chamber. Let's go look at this again. Can the children of the bride chamber mourn as long as the bridegroom is with them? But the days will come when the bridegroom shall be taken from them, and then they shall fast. Okay, so let's talk through what this is. The children of the bride chamber mourn as long as the bridegroom is with them. The bridegroom needs to be taken away from them, and then they will fast. This is using the mental hierarchy, because there's children of the bride chamber and there's the bridegroom. Where is the wife? What are the children of the bride chamber? These are the memories that we're holding. Offspring of our mental space. They cannot heal as long as we are consciously experiencing them. But the day will come when the bridegroom shall be taken from them, and then they shall fast. So we need to get away from the past. We need to move away from our past experiences. That term bride chamber is a fun one. What would it be like? It would be like saying Cain and Abel reside in Eve's house, which really means the two directions that we could turn. And by directions, what I mean, when we first live life, we live looking outward. And when we turn to the inward path, we turn inward. That's the two directions, outward, inward. It's not left or right or good or bad. It is outward or inward. Live inside of our mind. But the bride chamber is a place to reside, a place for all of the memories to reside. Yeah, it's a fun term. To fast from them. We need to leave the past. But we also have to, this is a mental thing. We're moving not only physically, but mentally away from our processes. The bride chamber is your mind. That's where the conscious and the subconscious should be married up. But they're not, because something in there needs to mourn. What is mourning? Let's go look at something back in the Sermon on the Mount. And these are good interpretation lessons as well. We had our blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. We figured that out means blessed are those who are devoid of your judgments, for you will have a good way to live in your mind. Blessed are they that mourn, for they shall be comforted. Now we look at these verses and have to do the same thing with them. Mourn, comforted. Think it through. Is that in all cases? Is that 100%? It sounds like if there's something that's bad, as long as you go through some sort of process and mourn, that eventually it's not going to hurt anymore. What if you're in a war zone and it never happens? You die, you get killed before anything ever resolves. You look at it and go, boy, I don't see how that's a physical thing. It's not. It won't work. Not 100%. You look at it and go, there's so many caveats that go with not interpreting it. If you think it through, you just go, that's a weird thing. And that's what people do. That's what John did. Yep, that's a weird thing. I don't understand it. That's just the way it is. Okay, so we're going to interpret it. How does that happen? Mourning is an analogous term. When we have issues that we haven't got resolved, we don't like to face them. So we keep them tucked away, and they stay there, and they continue to act out. And of course, we know acting out doesn't mean that it has to be something that manifests into the physical world with somebody else involved, but it might manifest in your mind as just turmoil. Yeah, it would be something secret to the person. Mourning means resolving them, healing them, looking at them, like forgiving the ought against your brother, the same thing. Mourning means to address a pain that you've got until you can look at it in such a way that you've gone, okay, yeah, I'm going to let it go. It may not have been okay. I may not rejoice it, but I'm not going to drag this. I'm not going to let this thing be a ball and chain in my life. I need to let it go. All right. Now, if you pay attention, you're going to see something flow together here. First of all, maintain always, no matter where you go, the same interpretation process. It's mental. Each verse, as you move along, it's mental. If you try to think of it as a conscious, what's the next one here? What does it say? Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Really? I don't think so. That is not a physical reality. The earth is your experience, your earth, your perception of the earth through your mind's eye. Meek means to be mild and, you can't be this frazzled, I hate myself, I hate this, that tears us up. Meek, if we want to inherit our experience on earth, we must be meek. That's the only way these are going to work. If you think them through in the physical world and go physically and say, does that really work? You're going to say, well, sometimes not at all, and sometimes you'll go, sometimes, maybe, for some people, but not for others. It doesn't always work that way. There's too many caveats. When you interpret it, that goes away. It becomes 100% mentally interactive. There is none of that sloppy, I don't know what's going on there stuff anymore. That's the people standing outside the narrow gate. Seriously. They're in the material. Metaphorically, the material, the stories, the teaching itself, the way that the nesting process creates a story is the ark. And looking inside of it is what we're doing right now. The ark is always there. It's metaphoric. All right, and I know you've seen these before with my other interpretation work, Stefan there. But if you look here, you'll see that there becomes a flow then. If you interpret each one of them and maybe write in there what you think that what it should be or how you interpret it. So this is like, happy is the one who is mentally devoid of judgments, for theirs is a happy life. Blessed are they that resolve their issues. That's how you're going to get comfort from them. You must be meek in order to inherit your earth. You can't be some angry, frazzled, turn inward, outward, all over the place sort of a thing. You got to chill. You got to go, all right, I need to think through this. I need to be a little more stoic about this. Blessed are they which do hunger and thirst after righteousness, for they shall be filled. We're hungering and thirsting. We're desiring righteousness. What is righteousness? Righteousness was developed in Genesis as, let me go there. All right, I've got the Genesis King James Version up here, and I'm gonna make a claim here that I'm not going to talk through because it just gets so deep that it'll make this video go on forever. I've covered this extensively. But righteous, and there's a word numbering system that's being developed in here. And let me just kind of briefly say that there is a point here where all of these grouping of numbers, these 22 numbers right here, research has shown me that these numbers are repeated over 6,000 times in the Bible. But also, words are repeated the exact amount of times. Righteous by itself is said exactly 12 times. You see, it's one of the numbers. It fits on the grid right here as a location, as a mental location of inner peace. Okay, and throughout the Bible, righteous and righteousness always means that. They've established that early on. So this says, blessed are they which do hunger and thirst after righteousness, for they shall be filled. That means if you desire this knowledge, it's going to unfold for you. You're going to find it. It's going to show up. There's some kind of a drive that's happening. We're on a program. So it flows like that. Stay empty of judgments. Resolve the ones you've made. Be easy. You'll inherit your life experience. You look for the inner path and you are serious about it. You hunger and thirst for it. You're going to be filled. What is that righteousness? It's that empty self. You're going to find the pathway. And it's going to go on like that. You have to reason through the verses in a mental process that puts it in the psyche. I'll just glance at the next two really quick. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. Again, you might say, well, I could be merciful to some angry, hateful person, and they might not give me mercy back. You look at that and go, well, maybe, sometimes. So you have to say, nope, this is an inner, if you need it to be, you want it to be 100%. This is merciful on ourselves. This is merciful on what has happened, what we've done and what has happened. We've got to find ways of healing. But the next one says what? Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. God is that inner awareness. And when you're pure in heart, you're connected with that. That's why God disappears in the beginning and then reappears after a calling and a cleansing, or to prepare for God reappears when it's time to destroy the earth and talk to Noah. But he disappeared after Cain and Abel and was not around through the entire time. So that represents the idea that we're not living through that. Pure in heart, empty. Poor in spirit is going to be the same thing as pure in heart. Poor in spirit, pure in heart. Two analogs showing different analogs that tell the same thing. Heart is what? Heart is how we feel. Heart is from our thoughts, our memories, our mind. The feelings come from there. Our emotions come from there. So pure from our mind. Poor in our mind. we shall see God, is the kingdom of heaven. It's repeating right there. All right, I just want to put this out there. All right, we have the idea now that God is whatever this is out here, that we can get our consciousness there, and from here, wherever this is, and when we're not up here with our consciousness, it'll come and knock on our door. Is it part of the mind, or is it something that's out there? I don't know. All I know is that there seems to be something from outside coming in, but that if I know that it's there, I can go engage with it without it coming to me. I can just say, you know what, I can mentally shift to this space up here where I go, you know what, I know better. I'm caught up in my fears and my memories. That's living in heaven, and God is the one that you're talking, is that higher awareness that looks at things from a detached perspective, that goes, yeah, that happened. Got it. Yep, understood. You're an animal. You need to, if you want to rise above it, you have to let that stuff go. Find ways of healing it so you can let it go. The higher awareness is going to be part of what helps you get over barriers, fear barriers. And living from heaven is when you live from a place where you are no longer getting the fears and all those things are not there. You don't get sucked back into them anymore. But it's not an overnight process. It's a step by step. You got to move along and resolve the things. But what's important is to understand that mind state is there, and that we need to start, whatever it takes to become self-observant, so that you catch yourself more and more frequently going, oh, I'm sucked into I need to get to the higher awareness. And then later on you go, oh, here I am sucked into my thoughts again. Get to the higher awareness. That's going to keep happening. But the more you work at habituating getting there, then the more you can get there. But you have to be aware of that and do that consciously. Work at that. Know that that higher awareness is there, and engage with it. When you're having fun in the here and the now, it's a non-issue. It's when you find yourself getting sucked into memories or concerns or worries that at that time there's nothing you can do about. Now, there might be things that are on the horizon that need to be resolved. That's a little bit different. But I mean, as far as just mainly having memories that you're cycling through, because that's causing your future life anyway. We go back to the wineskin now, or the wine. Now, something that I want to say, it's a part of the numbering system. The wine is an analog that I know is a good thing, and here is why. If I search here in Matthew, I'm going to find that that wine fits on that grid, on that same grid. That wine is repeated exactly 3 times in the book of Matthew. This one is wine bibber and wine press. Wine itself, is only said 3 times, and it's said right here in verse 17, which is also another one of our collected numbers. Sarai's name is said 17 times. We know that wine here is a way of life. It's a way we feel. All right, so we figured out that the bride chamber is your mind, and you must heal, but you've got to stop living the life that you're living. You've got to remove yourself from it, and physically and mentally. We've got to leave the past behind. That's what's happening here. John is asking him, and he's saying something else. He's leaving the past behind. And you can't take your old self and just put something on it. We're covering ourselves. This would be like if this is much later, so they're not using naked. Naked was used rarely. In Genesis, remember when Adam and Eve were naked in the garden, but after first sin, they got covered. And they felt shame, so they got covered. And then after the flood, after the first clearing, Noah was naked. Naked was a good thing. It's one of those times where the term has to be inverted. You understand that, okay, naked means that I am spiritually covered or not. I've got something to hide. So now I'm going to cover myself because I have shame. Now after the flood, the shame is removed, but out of shame, the sun's covering back up because we're going to have a repeating process going on there. But the elements that we're seeing there is the covering. They don't continue to do that. That would be kind of weird to keep having naked men getting covered up, which is what they would have to do. So instead, they shift to other things. And what you're going to see is like linen garments or, sackcloth garments or pure white garments or things like that, different types of robes, they're still going to be using that representation. Somewhere in the Gospel of Thomas, which is like Christian era, they had a naked one in there that you'll get that you'll see the kingdom when you're like little children who take your clothes off and put them under your feet when the owners of the field come back to get it, or something like that. I'm paraphrasing. But naked is typically not used as a means to say, I'm going to uncover, I stand naked before you. Well, that sounds weird, unless you understand it's a spiritual thing and I got nothing to hide. But to say that sounds weird. They don't keep using naked. What they have now is they're covered. You got an old garment, an old covering, your old self. And you can't put a new self on top of an old self. You can't just say, I'm going to do something new. You have to resolve the old. If you try, then the rent is made worse. Your life becomes worse in trying to do so. You can't just move on and leave the past in place. You accumulate more and more. The past, and it recycles. Then we move down into 17. Neither do men put new wine into old bottles. All right, this one's using a shade of the mental hierarchy. Man is each of our consciousness. That's our conscious choices, no matter if you're a man or woman. So neither do we make choices of putting new wine into old bottles. New wine is a new way of living. Old bottles is our old self. So we don't put new life experience, new feeling into an old self, or else we break and the new self runs out and the bottles perish. But we put new wine into new bottles and both are preserved. We must effect the healing. We must be a new bottle, a new vessel, before we put new life experience into us. The bottles is a way of life. No, wine is the way we feel, the way of life, and the bottle is the self. So we don't put new wine into old bottles. We don't put new life experience into an old self, or else the old self breaks and the new experience disappears and the bottles perish. But put new wine into new bottles. So we must put new life experiences into a new self, and both are preserved. So we always put ourselves into these mentally. Somehow this story represents a component part of who I am. And I know the video's getting long, but you have to do this. And this is only a part of it. There's a lot of different kinds of verses. They don't all do that. There's not always component parts. You can see we've done a couple of them here where you're not a component part, but there's something else that if you interpret it, if you don't interpret it and you look at it in the physical world and go, well, that's a pretty weak thing to say. When you read stuff like that, the meek will inherit the earth, you just have to look at that and go, that can't be. That can't be. What does that mean? You can't just glaze over it or say, it's not really engaging with it. You have to remember, it's mentally interactive. You have to get it to that point. You have to always figure out what's going on, and then you come down around the analogs, figuring out what's going on, figuring out that I'm part of the verse, and we're doing the easy ones because there's component parts in there. I'm the bottle, I'm the jar, I'm the, whatever. You can't put that. Wasn't that the same? Whatever is in, we create a pot with clay throughout life, but it's what's inside that makes it what it is. And right here, we just had the wine in the bottles. You can't put a new self into an old self. So they're working together. They're not identical in their teaching, but they're both showing us that we are parts of, that our life experience is based on what we've got up here unmanaged. Or managed or not. Typically, we live life without managing it. We just live life bouncing off experiences and thinking that whatever we see out there, which is the final manifestation of energy, is what's really happening, when that's a screen showing the final manifestation of energy that's already in, forces already in action. And we don't want to be a part of it. At some point you realize that and go, that's why I don't judge that stuff. I just become a part of it. I'm becoming a part of a process that I don't like by judging it and looking at it and watching it. So we get away from all that stuff, but then we have to turn inward to heal. The material is going to go there, but it's going to do it in a lot of different ways. The killing the fig tree sort of thing. We put ourselves into that story. you become Jesus. The fig tree is what is growing out of your life experience. The disciples are your inner qualities that you have on the adventure. They marvel at what is going on here. But what is really contained in this story? There was a tree that was not producing fruit. It was a fig tree, and it was out of season. So that would mean for us that we've got something that we know is coming up in our life that is not productive for us. This is something that we have to do. It's something that's a waste of time. We don't like it. It's unimportant. Somehow, some way, somebody's leeching off of you or something like that, and you know that, then you get rid of it. Just cut it off in your life. We have to simplify things. And the idea that something is emerging, and that's not just out there. That's something from within. That is something from within. The tree that is not producing is emerging from your garden, not somebody else's. But if that tree includes somebody else, then that's it. That we have to find ways of getting rid of the things that don't produce for us in life. And you know what? At some point, you begin linking these verses together with other things. You realize, okay, well, there's a tree that is growing up here that needs to be gotten rid of because it's not producing anything. Well, you can also have thistles that come from the garden. They're growing from the garden, but they're not beneficial. They're detrimental. I don't recall where it is, but there's one about a tree that if you chop it down, it'll simply grow back, and not until you pull it from the root. All of them are showing a representation, variations of the representation of something emerging and growing from us, and each of them providing more detail. The one about chopping it down, what is that? Something emerges from me, you chop it down, but it grows back again, and you chop it down. What are you doing? You're resolving it. You're apologizing. I don't know why I did that. I'm sorry. I promise to never do it again. Then it happens again. Not until it's pulled out by the root does it stop emerging again. So once we break it down to that level, we can extract something that is mentally interactive from the verse, from the teaching. We have to work the verses through like that. It becomes mental, but it's really old, and they're using stuff in their time to assemble it all, the puzzles. They're like fables, but fables, you have to rework those too. Fables actually helped me learn some of this stuff. You hear Aesop's fable, and the tortoise and the hare have the race, and the hare is almost won, but he's so far ahead he decides to rest, and when he wakes up, he sees it's too late. The tortoise is just crossing the finish line. And the moral of the story, it's slow and steady that wins the race. The person that processes that is going to have the processing brain would say something like, wait a minute, how come it isn't when you're almost finished, don't stop and take a rest? There's other options within that verse. That's what we're doing here with these. We're mentally manipulating them and finding all of the options, but also realizing those words don't mean exactly what they say. Every one of them is analogous. Every once in a while, you get some that mean exactly right on, but typically it's not. There's something different, that they mean something different. And, okay, if you have any questions, I hope that was helpful. It really does get deep. It gets big. The Buddha Dhammapada stuff is a little more plain language. Just popped something wide open here. All men tremble at punishment. All men fear death. Remember that you are like them, and do not kill, nor cause slaughter. All men tremble at punishment. All men love life. Remember that you are like them, and do not kill, nor cause slaughter. He who, seeking his own happiness, punishes or kills beings who are also longing for happiness, will not find happiness after death. He who, seeking his own happiness, does not punish or kill beings who also long for happiness, will find happiness after death. So these ones, in some cases, are very plain language and not the cryptic style of, let me figure that out. Oh, you know what? There was one more here that we just did the other day from Hindu. I wanted to pull that one up again. What was that? It was the Isha Upanishad. The Lord is enshrined in the hearts of all. We just did this the other day, but you would look at that and say, okay, what is the Lord is enshrined in the hearts of all? You have to work these through and say the same thing. It's going to be mentally interactive. I don't care where it comes from in the world. If it's following this pattern, it's going to end up, it's created from the mental experience of a human. That's why it's always going to, if you've extracted the material, then you've got you've got it. You've got the steps. The Lord is that higher awareness that we have. We've talked about that. That's the part of us that can step outside of our memories and feel very matter of fact. That's what we need to be living through instead of our memories. We have to defeat our memories and live through the higher awareness. It's enshrined in the hearts of all. What is that? That's everybody, but what are the hearts of all? This is where you start thinking things like, how can that higher awareness, well, we know what that is now, and we know what the answer is. But you would look at that and say, what is a heart? How can something be inside of somebody's heart? And you have to begin realizing certain things. Okay, they're using verbiage that is not like ours. But also what we know is that our emotions are something that we feel. It's something that we feel viscerally when they're strong, when we're afraid, when we love, or something like that. It's not just like observing something or hearing something or whatever. You're actually having a physical, emotional experience. So if we reason that through, what we know is that we have feelings through our central nervous system, and that feeling is going to be reflected upon our mental state. It's the environment, but it's the state of our mental state. You might be enjoying something that somebody else is freaking out over watching. So it's really the mental state that is the issue more than the environment. Of course, if the environment is dangerous, everybody's going to be scared from it. So what we're looking for here then is knowing that our feelings come from a state of mind. Therefore, the Lord residing in the heart resides in the mind. In the same way that poor in spirit means devoid of in the mind. So the verbiage is going to shift all over the place. It's going to sound radically different if you don't interpret it. If you do interpret it, suddenly it will all be the same thing from all masters from around the world. There's something at an underlying level, deeper, where there is unity. And this God, I mean, it comes in and it'll tap you on the shoulder sometime when you're freaking out, sitting there, and come up and say, hey, man, come on, you know what to do. What is that? There's God talking to you right there. We don't know it. Okay, so far as verse interpretation, that's it. It's really a mental... It's a mental challenge. It really is. It's a puzzle that you're working through in your mind by asking questions and saying, how can this be? How can this work? How can this work? Oh, it's got to be in my mind. Okay, so it's not meek about the earth. It's the earth. Oh, it's my experience okay, I got to be gentle on myself. Okay, I get it. We have to go there with it. It takes a while, but you have to work it out on your own too. Watching me you won't be able to go off and do that now. You won't. You have to sit. The Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao. First one right off the bat. You got to make it your own. Watching me is just watching me. I'm telling the Tao, so it's not eternal. You can watch and see what I've learned, that it took a while, but now you know that it's there. You still have to go do it. You still have to train your brain to do it. Okay. Stefan, hope that was helpful. Ask any more questions or comments. I love this. It gives me a direction to go. Everything is so dead out there. I don't know what to even... I'm about ready to find a new hobby. I've learned everything I needed to or what I wanted to, and I don't know what else to do. Tinker here or there. All right. Hope this was helpful. See you in the next video.